And let's make some changes, because now we need to know what these people bought. And we can't put what people bought in here and still have a primary key, because for each transaction we have several different items. If we put those in there, then we can no longer group by transaction ID and date and all those other pieces of data in there. So we're going to have to make some changes. Now watch my mouse. I'm going to slide it over here until it's clicked downward and highlighting the grid with the field that I want to highlight. I'm going to drag it along with holding down my left mouse button, and then I'm going to hit delete. I still want to keep transaction ID, and I still want to see what's happening with each particular purchase. So I'm going to go add the fields that make sense here. I've already added these to the other table. I need them here to only look at what they bought, how much of it they bought, and what discount percent was applied. And you'll see that catalog price, I'm going to leave it here because that belongs in yet another table. The other table it belongs to, it's an attribute of a product. So it's not going to be something that we want to use in our transaction table. We want to store that attribute as an attribute of product. I'm also going to take away the totals row because I don't want this grouped by. In some strange universe, if I were to have, well, it wouldn't happen with the transaction ID, but in some situations you might have places where you've got exactly the same data without a key, but it might, group by might cause it to only list a record once when you actually need to see it twice. So you want to take that off when you're not interested in conflating data. So I'm going to go ahead and click the select button up here. A select query is the default kind of query where you're just selecting data, and I'm going to run it. And this should bring me right back to 60,298 records. If I sorted ascending, I'm back to 15 entries for our first transaction. And there is all the attendant data. So this is going to be our transaction details table. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to design view. I'm going to click on make table again and change the table name, very important, to transaction details. Save it in the current database and click OK. Click run. And we're going to paste 60,298 rows into a new table. Click yes. So there we go. We have our transaction and transaction details. We have members. We have our member table and all the rest. We only have a few more to go, but I just want to reiterate what we've done here. You can go ahead and save the changes. What we want to do here is show you the database tools relationships window. And right now I've got my class table, employee training, my member, my transaction, and I'm also going to put in transaction details, ratings, taxes and shipping fees. And I believe that's all we've got. Okay. We'll deal with a lot of these in a few minutes, but I just wanted to get them in here. And I want to show you that we've got transaction details, and we've got the minimal redundancy required to connect them, which is transaction ID and transaction ID. Now what I failed to do was I failed to make transaction ID a primary key. So what I'm going to do is when you're here and you've forgotten to do something, you can go into your transaction or into your table, right click and choose table design, and it'll take you right to your table design, and you can go ahead and set your primary key. Okay. Now I can actually create a one-to-many relationship, which I'm sure you'll read about in Chapter 5. And by enforcing referential integrity and allowing access to cascade update any fields that are related. If I change the primary key in one table, it's going to change in the other one as well. Any changes I make to related key fields will change throughout every table. Notice that I'm telling it it's a one-to-many relationship. That means a primary key where I only have the number 1 once to identify the first transaction, but yet over here it occurs 15 times. So that's a one-to-many relationship, and I'm going to click Create. Later we'll go through and attempt to create other relationships and also to adjust our data types. But I'm going to start here by saying, all right, we've got a member ID here in the table, transaction table. We've got a member here, which is the primary key table for members. So I'm going to attempt to create a relationship between member ID and member ID. I want it to be a one-to-many relationship. In other words, I want one member to make many, many, many transactions. So this is going to be the foreign key. When I try to enforce referential integrity, here's what happens. I get a message. And this message isn't necessarily an error message, but it's very informative to you because this is crucial to your database integrity. Referential integrity means that you have foreign key information or foreign key data in a table that isn't already entered into a primary key table. So for example, you might have members whose IDs don't appear in the member table, but who have transactions in the transaction table, which is what happened here. And Access will let you form a simple relationship here, but it won't let you enforce referential integrity, meaning it won't protect you from orphan records. Orphan records are dangerous because, for example, if I have 100 transactions in here or more that I can't attribute to anyone, then I don't know really what to do with them in my business. So what I want to do is make sure that I have matching records between tables. And it actually tells you this. There may be records relating to an employee in the related table, but no record for that employee in the primary table. It's exactly what it means, and what we have to do is fix this before we can create this relationship. So I'm going to cancel. What was the problem? Well, I'll tell you what. The problem was, do you remember those more members people that we cleansed earlier? We did that in class, and this assumes that you have already cleansed that data. But what you have to remember is that we are missing members. So if I were to go over to my Access folder, get rid of all my other windows here, go over to my Access folder and look, I have a more members table. Okay, there it all is. And I have cleansed this data fairly well. I've made sure we did this in class. And I'm going to add one more step to this by just saying that I'm going to put all of this cleansed data into safe mode, essentially. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to make sure that I just paste values just in case there's any formulas or anything there. I'm going to take all of this data and I'm going to place it in a named range called append members. Notice that I've got, oops, guess I should have hit enter there. Okay, now we've got the named range. Well, that's not what we wanted. Sorry, let's try that again. Let's go ahead to the name manager. This is a good review. In formulas, name manager, and append members refers to only one cell. Let's make that not happen. That would ruin everything for sure. We want it to start in A1, Control Shift down and right arrow, and we'll pop right back in. So it should refer to A1 to P101. And we're good to go. Click close. Save changes, and we should be good. Check your work. There we go. So that's going to be what we're going to import. One thing to remember about importing is that the field names must match. And the data types should pretty much be the same. There are two ways you're able to do this. One of them is you can import like we've always done, and then append to a new table, or append to the member table. Or I can actually take the data minus the field names. As long as they're in the same order, I'm in good shape. And I can go back to my Access database, open up member, go down to, let me expand that for you. See, I've only got 2,595 records in here. I'm missing 100. Down at the bottom, there's a new blank record button right here. Click it. That sends you to a blank record. Click it right there. Click it so that the arrow is pointing right and it selects everything about it. And then go up to the Home tab, to the clipboard, and don't paste it, but rather paste append. That's probably the easiest way to get stuff into your database, as long as you're very meticulous and assure yourself that everything's in the same order. And in fact, you can quickly check through this and see that it is. So, are you? Do you want to do this? Sure. Click yes. Now, if we close the table, now we should be able to make that relationship between member and member ID. Member ID and member ID. Enforce referential integrity, cascade update, and then create. There you go. So today we've talked about normalization, which partially is removing most redundancy and making sure that data is not repeated between two tables, or that it doesn't need to be repeated in multiple records. So we've done normalization, and we've also learned about what referential integrity is.